Hello, my name's Ed Poole, and today I'm talking to Claire Sheppard, who is standing to be a councillor for the Green Party in Nunhead and Queens Walk, Queens
Queens
Road,
Queens Road, Peckham. Yeah.
Queens Road in Peckham. Didn't take me long to forget that, did it? Hi, Claire.
Hiya.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself and why you're running?
I'm Claire Sheppard. I'm a mum. I'm a small business owner. And I'm a community activist here in Peckham. I'm running for the eighth election in 8 years because I'm clearly a glutton for punishment. But the reason that I started running is because I live in a broadly very, very Labour area, and I felt that the Labour councillors and MPs and assembly members kind of take our votes for granted here. We kind of joke and say you could stick a red rosette on a bin and it would win round here, and I just thought that's not good enough. I had I had a I did a politics degree back in the late 90s when things could only apparently get better, how wrong we were. Um, and at the end of it, they asked, "What have you learned?" And I said, "Well, I've learned that politics isn't for people like me." But then back in 2015, I had a huge life event happen that really shifted my perspective on that. I just had a son and I got diagnosed with cancer 3 months after he was born. And I was being treated at St Thomas's Hospital, which is bang across the river from the Houses of Parliament. And I was going through the junior doctors' strike every day to my treatment. And I thought, if I get through this, I'm gonna go for it. And I went to an elect her event a couple of years later after I'd recovered. 10 years clear now, so that's all good. Um, and it really encouraged me that working class women like me were hugely underrepresented in politics and that there would be a space for me if I chose to kind of follow that path. And that's what I've tried to do since. Specifically, I'm standing here in Nunhead and Queens Road because it's where I live. I live here in Peckham. I've lived here for the best part of 30 years. I love my community so much. It's, in my view, the best place on earth to live. And I feel like it's underserved by its elected representatives. So that's why I've plugged away at general elections, London Assembly elections, and council elections. And hopefully, this is the one.
What made you join the Green Party?
I first joined the Green Party in 2015 and I was pregnant at the time. And weirdly, I saw a party political broadcast that made me go, "Oh, hello, who's this?" And it was that boy band one where they had kind of boy band version of Cameron, Miliband, Clegg, and Farage all singing the same tune in different coloured ties. And it really resonated with me. And I looked further into the Green Party policies and I was like, well, there they are. That's the people for me who prioritize, the existential crisis that we're facing with the planet, who care about the inequality gap, about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, who care about community and who care, full stop, I suppose. Um, so yeah, so I joined them, but I didn't become active for a bit because then my life exploded.
So you ran for Parliament in 2019. How was it running against Harriet Harman?
It was quite daunting, if I'm honest. The first hustings I did were against Harriet Harman, and she's former Attorney General. And I'm just me. I'm just a regular working class mum. I found on the first day of campaigning, I felt like she did something to try and, I don't know, scope me out, intimidate me. She turned up at my son's primary school, specifically at his gate. He was in reception at the time, and only the reception class went in at that gate, and that's where she put herself, not at one of the busier gates. So I thought, it's not very sisterly, Harriet, is it? I somewhat naively thought, with her being the first MP pregnant in Parliament and being known as a prominent feminist, that maybe that's not how she'd play things. But there she was on the first day. My lovely neighbour Paddy over the road, who's also a Green Party member, just kept her talking the whole time, so she didn't talk to anyone except for him and me. Um, so that wasn't that successful. But the first hustings was, that's it's not. I'm not a public debating kind of society person. I just went to a normal school, not a private school. So, it wasn't a big thing there. So it was quite intimidating. But I held my own. We had Piers Corbyn in the audience as well, trying to derail things, which was fun. Um,
Derail them how?
well, he's just very disruptive in a hustings setting. I've faced it. I've had the pleasure a few times now, shall we say. And yeah, he tries to derail things. He's a conspiracy theorist. He doesn't believe climate change is real. So yeah, that way, he'd try and put you off your stroke, as it were, by giving you a leaflet saying climate change is made up, which I just laughed at him, really. But as the years have gone by, if anything, he's got more weird and radical. At last year's general election hustings, he kept trying, he was actually on the panel that time, strong-armed his way onto the panel, and he tried to kind of talk over me a bit. But in the interim years, I've been the candidate in Lambeth and Southwark for the GLA elections. So I'm well aware of him and the things his group of merry pranksters do. So they turned up at the vigil for Sarah on Clapham Common with their loudspeakers shouting over women. So I pulled that out of my backpack and was just like, no, Piers, this is the kind of thing that you've done in the past. You can't talk over me now. It's my time. I'm much more comfortable in that setting, especially if it's a man who likes talking over women. I don't like that very much at all.
Is he local to you then?
Yeah, he is. And, apparently back in the day, he used to be a really good housing activist and quite a nice guy. But he doesn't come across as a very well man these days.
Mentioned about Harriet Harman. One thing that surprises me sometimes is the sort of pettiness of quite powerful people. I wrote an
Mm.
article once about when Matt Hancock became health secretary. I was working in GP practice, and I wrote an article about how I didn't think his plans for GP practices were very good. And his office phoned. I was a Labour Party activist at the time. His office phoned the article and made sure that the magazine put that I was a Labour Party activist into the article. And then he did an interview for the magazine that month, bumping
Mm.
my article into the online only version and out of the print version.
Yeah, it's
Which
super petty.
I mean, it's a magazine that doesn't even go in newsagents. It just goes to GP practices. Hardly anyone would have seen it. But he was apparently horrified. So
Yeah, it's wild. I had it as well with and I can say this, disgraced racist former Lambeth Labour mayor, Philip Normal as well. Which campaign was it? It must have been the GLA ones. And he clipped. I was on BBC London News, doing the greenest thing that you can do, saving smoke trees. And how cliche is this? But what I was doing was writing on a banner, and I remember what I was writing. It's so cheesy. I wrote, "Give trees a chance," and he clipped that bit and put it on his Twitter, saying that, Green Party doing illegal and shameful activities, saying that I was graffitiing the Box Park in Brixton. And lots of people went back and were like, actually, this is the whole clip. You must know this because you've cut this clip. You should take this down. And he wouldn't take it down for ages and ages. I had to write a complaint to the council about him. And he said the pettiest apology in the world to me that was so ridiculous. I sent a response saying if my child had apologized in this fashion, I'd send him to his room and tell him to go back and think about it and come back and apologize properly. and which I think the legal department at Lambeth Council really quite enjoyed because I suspect they had a lot of nonsense like that from him. But then some people went through his socials and found a load of frankly racist and unsavory stuff that he'd said in the past. So, I can laugh at his downfall, I suppose. But yeah, it's just that, why are you like this? Why are you like this? I'm not your enemy.
Until recently, it's been really tough for Greens to win elections, but you've run in lots of elections. How have you found it?
Well, it's been relentless. There's been a lot of them over the last few years. Um, I was quite lucky my first time running 2019. I was one of only 13 Greens across the country to keep their deposit in the general election. But since then, things have built up and up. So we've been making strides with every election. So whilst there's not been an election I've run in that I didn't want to win, I knew that it might not be likely in some of them. So you set achievable goals like coming second, which I've done many times now. Last year's general election got 20% of the vote in Peckham constituency where I stood, with very little campaigning because we're all heading off to the target seats. So that's really encouraging and speaks to the work that we've been doing year on year, election on election. And it's getting through. It's starting to get through to people, even before the incredible, Zach Plansky boom that we've had in the last sort of 6 months. I can't believe it's only 6 months. Um, where things have obviously blossomed hugely to the extent that, our ambitions have grown massively, where we only had a couple of target wards this time last year. Now we've got lots of target wards and development wards, and we're hoping to take a good chunk of council seats in May. So that's transformative. But really, I've sort of, after every election, I've allowed myself a kind of weekend in bed, bit of a cry, too much chocolate. Um, and then just, dust off the shoulders, get back out there. There's always leaflets to deliver, there's always doors to knock, there's always things to do. There's casework, even though I've not been elected, I've been doing casework in my community for years. And on top of the Green Party stuff, I've done community activist stuff as well. So there's always stuff to do, and there's always ways that I can see that we could make things better. So on we go, on to the next thing. And this time, hopefully, we'll have a good bunch of green people elected on Southwark Council, and that'll be wonderful. That's really going to pay off all the years and years and years of grunt work that we've put in.
I think a lot of it's about planting seeds, isn't it, over the years. Every conversation you have, every time you come second, even next time it makes it a bit more achievable and more people are kind of aware of the Green Party and aware of what we're about and what we have to offer.
And they
Um,
see that we're electable as well. The more we're doing, the more they see that we're electable. And I can't wait to get that breakthrough because I know once we've got, even a few Green councillors, we'll get more. We'll get more because people see how hard we work for them.
Particularly since Gorton and Denton has been really a big breakthrough for us in terms of getting into people's minds that the Greens is not a wasted vote and people can genuinely vote for the Greens, even if they're worried about letting reform in or letting the Conservatives in, you could still vote for what you want rather than sort of lesser of two, three, four, five
Yeah.
evils.
Who wants to vote for the slightly least worst option? You know, no wonder people have there's voter apathy because if that's your choice, that's a terrible choice. But you've got incredible working class women like Hannah running, and it gave me hope. I wept. I wept at the election result. I wept at her maiden speech because, yeah, harking back to me in the late 90s going, well, politics isn't for people like me. Maybe now it is.
Why do you think people should vote for the Green Party?
Because we're not just wearing a slightly different coloured tie and just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, basically. We've got different ideas. What Zach was saying today in his speech about how we need to view economic policy, I think, is a key plank of it. Because the problems that we face in this country are massively to do with inequality. And as far as I'm concerned, the Green Party is the only party that's got different ideas about that, that doesn't think we should just pursue endless growth if it's making life worse for the people who live in this country. And we seem to be the only party who are talking about that seriously and saying, the problem isn't, a brown person coming in on a small boat. It's a rich person on their super yacht. That's our problem. And I think that we're honest about things like that. And I think Zach's honesty and Mothin's honesty and Rachel's honesty and Hannah's honesty, I think that cuts through to people. And I think people should vote for the Green Party because they want the world to be a better place and because they've had enough of the same old, same old.
Great. Um, how do you think, what do you think local councils can do about the housing crisis?
I mean, there's a lot, especially in Southwark. We've had an awful lot of council housing sold off to developers at a song. And it happened under the Lib Dem Council, and it's happened a lot more under the Labour Council. I think there should be absolutely no conflict of interest between councillors, people working for the council, and their relationship with developers. There's a great campaign here in Southwark called the 35% campaign. And they've got a great page on their website about the revolving doors between the councillors and developers in Southwark. And it's shocking. It's genuinely shocking. The amount of people who have been schmoozed by Lend-Lease, which is a company that bought a huge amount of estates. Got schmoozed over in Cannes there. Now some of those guys are working for Lend-Lease. And it just seems a bit tidy. Our leader of Southwark Council at the moment, who got in after a very left-leaning guy, James McAsh, who's now joined the Green Party, was voted council leader. And then Neil Coyle got involved and had the election rerun. So our council leader now is Sarah King, whose day job, she's apparently resting from it at the moment, but her day job and her husband, who's also a councillor, they have a business advising development companies how to how to negotiate with councils is how I believe they put it. And there's a lot of that. So I think that first thing we need to get the developers out of these decision-making process is because they are very much there. We need to have a hard line on building more council housing. I know at the moment, the 35% campaign is named after the amount of affordable housing that should be in developments. And I know Labour are planning to cut that down considerably. I think that should be non-negotiable. Not that the affordable housing is actually affordable to most of the people here, but I think that there should be an amount, especially with big developments, that is actually council housing. If you want to build hundreds of flats here, then some of them have to be council flats. That's what's needed, that kind of radical. And it's not really that radical. That's the thing, To me, that doesn't sound radical. That sounds like common sense. But that's what we should be doing. We should be prioritizing council housing, social housing. I grew up in council housing, and I know the difference that affordable, safe, warm homes make to people and the start that that can give you, and the basis that people get from that. And I just think, for too many generations now, there's been pretty much no council housing built when you balance it with what's been lost. And I think we've got to look at that. We've got to look at that really seriously and improve the stock we've got and retrofit the stock we've got because so much of it is poor standard housing. And people seem to think that that's okay because it's just council housing. But it's not council housing. These are people's homes. These are people's lives. This is their quality of life. You know, if you're in a home that's constantly getting mold, you're going to get ill. Your health outcomes are going to be much worse. And I think we've got to start looking at things more holistically that way. You know, if you can give people a good start in life, if you can have a good health service, if you can have good education, then it has positive outcomes for people across society. And we've got to look at that bigger picture.
One of the things, my kind of experience with Labour, I was in the Labour Party for 5 years, and it was quite a variety of different people with kind of different agendas. But one of the things that became apparent to me is particularly at a local level, and
Yeah.
as time's gone on, it's become more gone back to this as well. Is the Labour Party seems rather than to be the kind of the political arm of the trade union movement, it seems to be the political arm of the property development
Mm.
industry.
So much, and I'm sure that they've got their fingers in the pies as well, where it's like a safe Tory council. It'll be exactly the same MO. Because, like I said, if you could stick a red rosette on a bin round here, it's very easy if you've got somebody who lives in an area that's like that, whether it's red, blue, or yellow, you know, to go, right, well, if you just run as a councillor, you'll probably get there. And then they've got someone on the inside. It's far too chummy, far too chummy.
Over the kind of last, what, 10 years now, more than 10 years, funding for local councils has been absolutely gutted by
Yeah.
central government. What do you think councillors can do to push back against that?
Well, I think, you know, somewhere like here where we've got almost at the moment in Southwark, it's almost exclusively Labour councillors. There's a handful of Lib Dems. We've also got Labour Assembly members in the majority, Labour mayor, and a Labour government. And it seems to me that the councillors just aren't putting enough pressure on, you know, local government isn't putting enough pressure on national government to increase the funding and to make the changes. Here in Peckham, we've got, I think it's the eighth busiest interchange train station in the country. And it's almost completely inaccessible. And over years and years, local campaigners, Network Rail, Transport for London have been working together to improve that. And there was a plan. There was a plan. They were about to start demolition last summer. And then the Labour government withdrew the funding. And this time around for the council elections, the Labour councillors are like, we will work to get that funding. It's like, well, why the hell haven't you been working already? Why is it only now there's an election you're suddenly taking notice of this? You should have been on Steve Baker's back the moment that that funding was withdrawn and saying, hell no, not on our watch. But, you know, suddenly it's only an issue when you want people to vote for you. And it's nonsense, you know. One of our members did a great video where he's like, the call's coming from inside the house. Because it's like you're campaigning against your own side. You know, what's that about? Why aren't you putting pressure on there? And I don't understand why the national government could ignore that, you know. And they're gonna lose council seats hand over fist for it. At the next general election, they'll be losing parliamentary seats because of it, because people can see through this nonsense now. Um, and they need to be putting pressure upwards. You can see when you look at the London Assembly, for example, you can see how much the Greens there have pushed Sadiq Khan to do much more for the environment. We've got Ella's mum, Ros, who stood as a Green candidate, I think, in 2021 for us, and she's trying to push through Ella's law, and I really wish her all the success and I hope it goes through. But people using their voices like that to put pressure works. It works, even from outside the party. So why the hell aren't they doing it from inside the party? You know, because they're going to lose power at a local level, you know, across the capital and in Parliament if they don't buck their ideas up and see that this stuff is important. This stuff is more important than placating, you know, the gambling companies, the oil companies, the party donors. Your voters should be more important than your donors. And hopefully they'll realise that from a local level up But yeah, the local councillors need to be doing more. The council leaders need to be doing more, and MPs need to start listening.
How can we combat the rise of the far right?
I grew up in Norfolk, which is traditionally a very Tory area, but seems to be becoming a very reform area. And I know that a lot of that stems from inequality and the fact that the hard right are selling the lie that they've always sold, that it's somebody else's fault other than the people who it actually is. It's the mega rich. It's their fault that things are so unequal. They've profited over the last few years, over the pandemic. You see how disgusting their profiteering was from a time of human crisis. And people have just lost trust in politicians because of that. So you get someone like Nigel Farage with his fag on and his pint on, talking like some bloke down the pub with his easy solutions, look over there, it's that brown guy, he's the problem. And it's a tale as old as time. I grew up in an Irish family, which was quite unusual in Norfolk growing up there in the 80s and 90s. So people would point to Irish people, you'd get lazy Irish, thick mix, that kind of nonsense kind of insult. Before that, it's been Jewish people, it's been black people. There's always someone to blame, and it's never their paymasters, it's never their mates. You know, half of I think more than half, most of the Reform MPs are all privately educated. They're not friends with the bloke down the pub. One of my colleagues in the Green Party said to me that the thing that I've got that a lot of Greens don't have is I've got big barmaid energy because I come from a family of publicans and I've stood behind a bar many, 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 many hours, serving these people and talking to these people. And they're not my enemies. I hate fascism. I hate fascists. But a lot of these people have just been sold a lie, an easy to believe lie, because it's much less complicated to blame it on someone else rather than the truth, which is for decades, maybe even forever, it's been the ruling class saying this is how things are going to be. Look over there, blame that guy. And it's never that guy's fault. It's always the guy telling you to look over there. It's a scam. And most of them are grifters. And I think if you have conversations with people, if people see that we are real people, we're not career politicians, we're not on the take. We're not taking huge donations from cryptocurrency people. We're we're a grassroots organization. We're representing real people. And my experience as a community campaigner, it doesn't show me that people hate each other. People don't hate each other. People, when you give them the opportunity to help other people and to make life better for their neighbours, most people will take that opportunity. It's just at the moment, how society's set up, it's almost impossible to have that opportunity. So I think that we've got to keep talking to people. We mustn't look down on people because they've got different views from us. Because, for all I know, members of my family probably vote reform. Do I hate them? No, I love them. They're members of my family. They're human beings. And all of us are just trying to get by, you know, and it's easy to believe that it's somebody else's fault rather than the bloke who's telling you it's somebody else's fault, you know? I think there's cognitive dissonance there, but we've got to keep plugging away. We've got to keep showing up reform and other far right people, Rupert Lowe, all his shower as well. These people aren't good people. These people don't have your interests at heart. There's another way. And all the people who are doing it as a protest vote, well, we're here now. You don't need to use that as a protest vote. If you want to protest against the system, really, don't lend your vote to somebody who went to Dulwich College. Lend your vote to someone like me who went to King Edward VII.
I was a barman quite a lot when I was younger as well, but I don't know if I've got big barman energy. I'm not sure. Um, grumpy, miserable barman energy, maybe. Um, but I worked in an Irish pub on Wrexham High Road as an Englishman. I worked in an Irish pub in Wales, so that was
I once worked in a pub in Sunderland when I was at uni up there, and it was a big footballing pub. And if you worked in the upstairs bar, you couldn't be a soft southerner there. So I used to have to pretend I was Australian when I was working that bar.
well, we used to get. I worked in during the I think it was the Euros or the World Cup or something, and you would get more Welsh people would come in to watch England to support the other team than came in
Yeah,
to watch Wales, because their main interest in football is they wanted to see England lose more than they wanted. And Wales
yeah,
were quite good at that stage as well, I think.
yeah,
Gareth Bale
yeah.
and
Then
stuff.
with Gary Speeches.
So one of the problems we have in the Green Party and all political parties actually is if you have infrastructure projects that are not popular locally. So, for example, if somebody wants to build pylons through Southwark and we need it for renewable energy, how do you kind of square that circle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think Adrian's got a horrible situation there because that is the situation that Adrian's facing. Um, I think our first duty is to represent our constituents. And I know from having gone door knocking there ahead of the general election campaign how hugely unpopular this project is there. And I think Adrian's got a point, that the rest of the infrastructure isn't pylons, but for some reason this section is. And why is that? And is that the best way to do it? I think it's okay to ask those questions. I think he'd be remiss to his constituents if he didn't ask those questions. I think it's very unlikely that someone would stick pylons across Southwark. It just, I just can't see it happening. Um, I mean, if they had to, if that's something that had to happen, then at least let's try and make them a bit beautiful, make them art, make them like those stag pylons, you know. But I don't see it happen. I don't see that being a problem here in Southwark, too much. I do understand that Adrian's in a difficult position there. And it's very easy to say that there should be easy answers to everything. It's complicated. Life's complicated. Infrastructure is complicated. But if we had a kind of plan for the whole country, getting the whole country on renewables, then maybe we'd be able to think about the infrastructure in a more holistic way rather than this bit gets it like this bit gets it like this. Um, so I hope that that's not going to happen in Southwark, but if it does, I'll see what the circumstances are around it, and I'll try and represent my constituents.
What issues locally do you think are important?
Housing is a huge issue here in Southwark. There's a huge waiting list for the council. There's problems with the quality of housing. Um, there was a report done recently that showed what poor standard most of the council housing is in Southwark. All these are issues that really, really need addressing. And again, Labour are just starting to think about it in the run up to an election, but they've been in power for a very long time. They should have been prioritising this for a very long time. I don't know how you can have been a councillor and visited people at home, which I hope they do. I do that, and I'm not even a counsellor yet. Yet. But I don't know how you can visit people in mouldy, unsafe homes and think that that's okay. I don't know how you can think that's good enough. So I think that's a huge issue here in Southwark. Um, the roads are a state, they're bad for motorists, they're bad for cyclists. And I know a lot of that's cuts, and the standard other thing, fly tipping. Fly tipping's been a big issue. We used to be able to have free on-street collections, and since that stopped, fly tipping has just gone through the roof here. And, this is the stuff that affects people in their everyday life. People aren't necessarily thinking about bigger geopolitics. But it is, we've also got issues here. Immigration bans sometimes turn up and try and take our neighbours away, but we don't really stand for that nonsense in Southwark. We will come and sit around your big van until you go away.
I remember when I was a kid, one of my I was born in Brighton, but I moved to Tottenham when I was about 6 or 7. And one of my earliest memories is the police uh, somebody, immigration police or something, I guess, come around knocking next door, and a guy jumped out of the bedroom window
Oh my
next
God.
door into their garden, and my parents hid him under our dining room table, and that's one of my earliest memories
Good work, parents.
of London. Yeah, is my parents hiding a fugitive from the police under the sort of dining room table. But
The basically right-wing Home Office situation where they are starting to try and round up immigrants and take them away doesn't go down well here in Peckham. I'm really pleased to say too, as the councillors who've come across to the Green Party, Reggie, particularly Reggie Popular, were leading lights in shutting down that kind of thing. And yeah, we don't stand for it here. It's that's quite a big thing. What else have we got? Transport. So the redevelopment of Peckham Rise Station being stymied, that's a big issue in our area. And also in Peckham, there's a mega development mooted, which apparently our councillors, our Labour councillors and our Labour MP are against, but it's gone up to the Secretary of State. It's bypassed the mayoral office, so we'll see what happens with that. But there is huge opposition to this. It's a mega development. It will completely change the skyline and the the essence, really, in a way, of Peckham because it's quite a special place. Um, and again, they're trying to cut down the affordable housing down to 12% there. So I think, out of hundreds and hundreds, it's, handful, basically, a couple of dozen tops. And people aren't happy about that. People want better.
what is it you love about Peckham?
I love what good neighbours people are here. During the pandemic, I set up an organisation called Nunhead Knocks. Our local Facebook group is called Nunhead Rocks, hence the name. And I put a shout out because a few years beforehand, I'd been at home with a newborn and cancer and then recovering from cancer. And that really brought home to me what you need when you're at home and when you're isolating. And I was like, my moment has come. I know exactly what people need in this situation. So I got organised very quickly. And one of the guys who runs the community centre just gave me the keys to the community centre and went, can you use this? And I said, yes, I can. So we were running a delivery food bank out of there. We were taking in, because everyone was clearing their house out, we're taking in furniture, home stuff for people being moved out of temporary accommodation. So they had stuff. We were collecting for the baby bank. We were collecting PPE that we were giving out for free. We were delivering hot meals, delivering prescriptions. And at one point, I think we worked out something like 15% of people who live in SE15 in our postcode area had signed up as volunteers to say, I want to help, which is extraordinary. And then we pivoted in 2022, 2023, when the cost of living crisis really started ballooning, to giving out micro grants to people for food or fuel. So people just had to send in proof of address and a receipt. It could just be I've charged my key meter. It could be a bill. It could be a shopping receipt for any food, any fuel. No judgment, no means testing. And we'd give them £50 a month. So over that winter, three of us fundraised £20,000 and gave out £20,000 in micro grants to people. And that to me just speaks of the kindness and largesse of people, people who were getting the rebate, the 500 quid rebate. I was like, if you don't need it, I can give it to some people who do. And it was completely transparent how we were giving it out. None of us got paid anything. It was when the London Assembly election got put back. We were about to start the short campaign, and then this happened. And I watched Newsnight, and someone from Public Health England was like, "Communities need to get organised." And I was like, "Right, let's get our community organised." And that's what we did, and it was wonderful. And that for me just cemented that this is the greatest place on earth. If you need something, if you need help around here, people will help you. People are great neighbours. You know, I've lived all over the place. I've lived in the northeast, I've lived in the countryside, I've lived in the city. I know all my neighbours here. They're all lovely people. Some of them don't agree with my politics, but we all stick together. You know, we muddle through and we will help each other. If you're in need, people around here will help you, and that's extraordinary. I mean, it's wonderful. It's heartening, and that's what keeps me going, really, because these people deserve better than what they're getting. I mean, they absolutely do.
Fantastic. Um, how can people get involved in your campaign?
Oh, there's so much. People can get involved. Come and get involved. We're out every week from now till May the 7th. As we get nearer, but I think from the end next weekend, I think we'll be out 5 days a week in my ward. And there'll be other campaigns 7 days a week, basically across Southwark. If they go to the Southwark Green Party website, there's an events page. If you click on the Peckham and Nunhead bit, we meet on either Nunhead Green or outside Queens Road's Peckham Station. Um, and then we go out and we knock doors. There's leafleting rounds. There'll always be leafleting rounds that need adopting across Southwark, and in my campaign. If you can't get out, there's phone banking that can be done. If you're rich, if you've got deep pockets, we'll take your donations and spend it on leaflets and doing good things. Um, yeah, there's all those ways that can help. Share our messages on social media. Just get stuck in, just do something. Because the thing that I've found going again and again and again and again over the last 8 years is you actually feel a bit better when you're helping. You know, you can feel a bit desperate. I mean, all of us look at the news and feel desperate all the time. But if you get involved, if you get stuck in, if you go out and knock on doors, if you do a bit of phone banking, you feel better because you are making the world even slightly, incrementally, a slightly better place. And we need that. We need that sucker. You know, we need to do that so our kids, so the next generation actually have a chance, so things are better for them. And getting involved and helping will help you. It will help your mental health. That's what I would say.
What's the Green Party vision for Southwark?
That things are better. I think that things are better for residents in Southwark. That we're not just accepting the status quo, that things can be moved on, that we can have more council housing, that the state of the council housing that we've got is much better, that we can have cleaner air, that we can have more cycle routes, that, that Peckham's just a nicer place to live with less rubbish around the place, cleaner air, people being taken care of a little bit better, and that being important. Carers being important, kids coming out of care being looked after. Those are the kind of values that we are hoping to bring to the council. And then, a lot of the polling's showing that it's likely that there'll be no overall control in Southwark. So that's why voting for the Green Party is so important in Southwark, because we can hold the balance of power here. And if we hold the balance of power, we will be pushing for things to be better, for the people who live here. We'll hopefully be making your world on a microcosm better, and eventually your world entirely better. So yeah, if we want to bring hope. We want to bring actual change, real hope, real change. That's that's the slogan, isn't it? But that's where I'm coming from. That's where my co-candidates are coming from. I'm standing with Catherine and Richard, who I should give a shout out to. We've been working away at this campaign for 5 years. Last time we had the biggest swing of any party in England or Wales at that council election. We put on 199% of the vote. And we've stuck together and we've worked hard over the years. Richard runs the local repair cafe. Catherine works helping refugees in her day job. And yeah, that care is at the heart of what we'll bring to the council. And I know that's true of our candidates across Southwark as well. I don't think anybody really is in this because they want power or they want glory. They're in it because they want to help their neighbours, they want to help their communities. And that's very wholesome and refreshing, I think, from politicians. And those are the kind of politicians I think people should vote for, not the ones who are on the take.
Claire, thanks very much.
Thank you.